Today, we're just going to focus on the Godot client side of things and build out the Matchmaker and Lobby UI. Those two recent videos I made where we created a Lambda WebSocket server and then had a Godot client connect to it are going to be the basis and starting point of today's demo. So if you haven't watched those, make sure to go back and check them out. But let's just dive in. So we're looking at connecting to a WebSocket. So when we click our Find Match button, we want this client to connect to our Lambda socket and get the available matches in the game. So instead of having this Find Match placeholder, we're going to build out this UI here, and that's going to be in this lobby scene right here. We're going to build out the lobby scene, but first, let's just start with the startup scene. And you can see here we have a lobby placeholder. We added this in the last video, and that is where the lobby scene gets loaded into. If we look at the script for the startup scene, down here you'll see that Find Match pressed, and we need to build this out a little bit more. And I want to highlight that when we're saving data that's related to the user, we need to have a user ID. So maybe you have an authorization or authentication system in place, or maybe you have a user database. At some point you need to get a user ID. I don't have that set up for this video, so I'll leave that up to you. But for this demo, I'm just going to create a mock user each time you join a game so that you can see the data for that one session. But the only downside to that is that if you're trying to work on a leaderboard, you won't be able to see what their previous scores were. So again, I'm going to leave that up to you guys to build out your user system, and let me know if you want to see how to do that, because I do have some ideas and I plan on visiting that sometime in the future. Anyways, let's create this mock user really quick. So what we're doing here is I'm creating a mock ID, which just maps to a player ID. So we're going to store that person's match data in the database using this ID. And then we're going to give them a username, which is just fun guy with the mock ID appended to it. So these two are going to be different for each session. And I wanted to pass in the rank. So normally you wouldn't do any of this. You wouldn't pass in data from the client like this, because your authentication system or your user table is going to hold that data. So when they make a request to the backend, you're generally going to have like an auth token or authorization token where you can go and get their actual ID out of, like you can parse that, make sure it's actually who they say they are. And that's how we secure these connections. Then you'll make a query to your database to pull out their username and their rank and whatever other information you want to store. So you're not going to really send their data back like this in general. This is just for this demo. I want to create a mock user in our lobby script, because our lobby is going to be where we actually send that data from. So that it's complaining because we don't have a mock user. So let's go create a mock user really quick over in the lobby. And we'll just leave it empty for now. Oh, and I have the lobby down here. Let's just move that up a little bit. We'll just stick it here. And because we know the scene, we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna make that preload. So we're gonna preload our lobby scene, which is just this lobby here. And we're gonna set the mock user to the one that we just created here. Great. Let's just fix this really quick. Let's preload and then instantiate. So we have an instantiated lobby, and then we can remove this. I think it's a little bit better to do it this way. And then we'll just add that lobby to the lobby placeholder right here. So then our lobby will be loaded in the scene. Nothing has changed. I'm just rearranging how we did it. One more thing before we get out of this startup script is when the lobby is actually finished matchmaking and the game starts, we need a way to get back here, because this on client pressed is what we want to call when the match has been made and the game wants to start. So what we need to do is create a start client function. So we're creating this start client function so that once the matchmaker is complete, we can call this so that it will actually call to our, this is really like what our signal uses to start the game when we hit that. Remember back in that other screen, we have this client connect. That's all that's doing, is it's calling back to here. So instead of doing that and calling this signal function, we're just going to create a function that's public for a signal to emit to. So that's what this is going to do. And we need to actually pass in the IP import. So let's just make a little adjustment here. So this is just setting the default values for the server IP import to the localhost values. If you just look up here really quick, we have 8080 and the localhost. Otherwise, we'll use what's passed in. So for example, when the matchmaking is complete, that server is going to give us the IP import of whatever server we need to connect to. And that may not be localhost because you're not going to play on localhost all the time. So you're going to pass in the IP import of that server, which will get passed up into here. And then you'll connect the Godot client to that server. So we need to connect to a signal from our lobby so that the lobby can tell this script to go ahead and start the game. So let's just do that really quick. So this is going to complain because we don't actually have a start client function or signal to connect to in our lobby. So let's go ahead and add that really quick. Okay. So again, when the lobby is finished with the matchmaking process and we're ready to start the game, we're actually going to emit this signal, the start client, from our lobby code, and it's going to come back and it's going to hit this function. It's going to tell the client to go ahead and connect to that server. So that's all we did. And that's what this connection is doing. It's just connecting between this function and that signal in the lobby code. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is just hide the lobby and matchmaker view, because when our game is starting, we don't need to see the matchmaker view. So let's just copy this lobby placeholder and let's just do get child, and we'll get the first child because that's going to be the whole lobby scene, and we'll just hide it. And then the game will be playing. So that's it for the startup. And really the rest of this is just going to be in the lobby code. So it's really 2 files. So we're just touching on startup, touching on lobby, and we're just going to build it out, and that's going to be it. Let's just run this to make sure we don't have any issues so far. Okay, if I hit find matches now. Okay, so we started up the client and you can see that it did create our mock user. It gave it an ID of 737. And there it is on the username, and here's just our default rank that we gave. Now we are getting an issue connecting to the WebSocket because it's not connecting to anything. If you look at our lobby code, that's not a WebSocket URL, so we're not going to connect to anything. So let's go ahead and kill that. Okay, and I think we're ready to begin working on the lobby screen. So what's the goal of this matchmaking lobby? So if you take a look at our diagram, we're gonna have a lobby scene with 2 containers, one for the matches and then one for the lobby. And this is probably better if you split it up into multiple scenes, but just to keep this all simple in one file, I decided to just use 2 different containers instead of 2 different scenes, but that's up to you. You can make some improvements to this. What we're gonna do is we're gonna show a status text that you can see here at the top. And then on the matches list, we're going to list a list of matches that we get back from the server. We're going to put some feedback above it to, tell the user what's going on. And then over here, you can have a little avatar section if you want, or whatever your game is. Maybe you have your deck of cards here, or whatever picture or avatar you want to put. We'll just put some dummy one here. And then above it, I'm going to list the current person's username. So we need to build out the UI for all this. And then once they click on a match, I'm guessing they're going to go over to this lobby screen, and we're going to also have a status. We're going to provide some match info, like what the team makeup is and maybe the name of the map. And then we can just show like a preview of the map. And again, you guys can build this out to whatever level of complexity or whatever things you want to show here. And then of course, I'm going to list the 2 teams that are going to be playing in the match along with the list of players underneath it. So this is just like a quick diagram that I wanted to show to have like a mock-up of like, okay, before you start into this stuff, like what am I actually building? What do I want to do? What do I want to show? And of course, there's a bunch of ways to handle that, but the best thing is to get it on paper first, do a little mock-up. So that's what this is. This is a little mock-up to see what we're going to do and what we're going to build. And if we look at the matches container, here we're going to list the available matches, and I'm just going to make them textured buttons. I'm not sure if that's the best way to do it. It worked great for me. And what's really nice about textured buttons is you can actually like give it a hover button texture or a press button texture. So it's really nice and it's easy to work with. And I liked using that. And then we're going to use the same button style for the teams. Okay, so let's build out that UI. Let's go over to the lobby screen. So what do we need to do first? Well, first, let's look at the views. We don't need this finding matches placeholder anymore. So let's remove that. And what we're going to do is add the status text at the top. So we'll create a rich text label. I'm using BB code, so we'll just hit enable BB code. That way we can actually apply formatting right in line to it. Let's move it down over here. And then if we look at the size, we'll get it moved into place. And then if we go down here, we can do some theme overrides to get that font to show up. Great, perfect. So we have our status text there and it's in place, and then we'll just update that status to reflect the current process, what's happening, like pick a match or waiting for players to join, that kind of thing. That's gonna be added here. Okay, the next thing we'll do is add a match container, which is just a panel. And then we'll just add a lobby container as well, which is also a panel. If we look back at the diagram, we need a place to put the list of matches, some text for the feedback, username, this image here, and let's see how to do that. So we just stubbed out a match status that lets us know what's going on in the match selection list over here. And then we'll actually have the list of matches that will be in this vertical alignment. So we can just put the buttons right in there and they'll order right in line with each other. And then we have a container for our player stats where I'm gonna put the avatar, the player's image, and then just a small little panel for the player's username. So first what we're gonna do is we're gonna set the matches container location. And I've already kind of built this out once, so I have a pretty good idea where it should go. And then our match status will be relative to that. And I'll just sit right there. And then we also just want to check the font size. Perfect. And let's do the same location adjustments on our available matches panel. And that'll allow those buttons to stretch out here. I believe I want to get rid of the container background. I just forgot to do that really quick. So if we go back down to theme overrides and hit styles, let's just create a empty box texture and you can see that disappears. I didn't like having that texture there. You can do whatever you want with it. We got our available matches done. Let's move on to player stats. And that's just gonna be our player avatar. And let's set the location here. So that avatar is gonna be over here. And then if we look at this image, we create a new image texture. And I think we can just drag in whatever image you want. And it should import that. All right, so it just added it down here. Let's just drag it up to the UI. Okay, great. And then I think from here, we can just drag it up to our image texture and there it is. So we need to figure out how to get it to scale and remain within the bounds. So I think to do that, we'll just say fit width with proportional. Okay, that didn't work as expected. Let me see if I have another setting that I need to adjust. I think yeah, okay, so I wanted to set some boundaries here, so let's go ahead and do that. And then I'm gonna just scale it half by half. Excellent, so there's our avatar placeholder that we have. So this avatar is hard coded, but for your game, you could actually, when you load your user's data, part of that data can include like a URL to maybe their avatar or their icon or whatever you wanna load here. And you can just dynamically load this based on the player. So for now, this is just a placeholder. Okay, now let's look at the user info. And I want this to have a background. Like I just like how it just sits over top of the avatar. I thought it looked kind of nice. Feel free to put this wherever you want. I'm just showing you the basics of how I did it. So I come down here and let's look at a style box flat color. And I think if we click on this, we can go in here and we can just select like whatever color we want. I think I just had like a little darker color somewhere around there. So now we have a little place where our username can show up. And if we go down under the username, if we type in username just to give it a placeholder, you can see it's not showing up. So we need to fix that. Let's also add, we want to do this with BB code as well. So wherever we actually set the username in code, the username will be centered. So let's click that so we can interpret it that way. And I want to fit the content as well. And if we scroll down to the layout and transform, it should show up there. And then we need to, one more thing is set the font size. And that should do it. And I'm not handling the case where it just expands beyond the length of this. I do have clip contents on, so if the username ends up getting too big, it shouldn't show up. So we got our username up and running. So wherever we call to set that in from the scripts, it'll be set here, and we need to surround it with that center BB code to make sure that it's centered there. So that's looking good there. We've got this. I'm not gonna work on doing the background styles for this. I just don't think that's really necessary for this video. All you can do is just come up and add a, like, I think it's a texture. Yeah, it's just a texture rectangle. And then you can set a texture just pretty much the same way that we did here. And then you can just expand it to fill the background, but I'm not gonna cover that in this video. Okay, so we've got our player stats and we've got our user info. And now I think we need to build out the lobby container. And if we take a quick look back at our diagram, our lobby is going to have some match info. This is like, 3v3 and the name of the map, and then our actual map, and then the two teams, and then some placeholder areas where the teams will get loaded. So let's look at that. So let's add a rich text. This will be our map info. So next, let's add a panel to hold the teams. And then a label for each one. And then we need to add a list that captures each team. So we're gonna add a vertical box for each one. I just named it red team and blue team, respectively mapped to team 1 and team 2. You can set this to whatever you'd like though. Okay, so team 1 is a blue team list of players, and then team 2 has the red team list of players, and those will show up right over here. So let's configure this location on the screen. So we'll come to layout, transform. All right, so we're over there. And again, let's just turn off the background image there. Great. Oh, I actually named these wrong. I wanted this to actually say blue team because we actually write blue team. I'm not sure what I was thinking there. And then we'll come down to this one and say red team. So that's just a quick fix. And then we'll name this team 1. This is where the list of players we're gonna go. Sorry about that. Team 2, okay. So then we'll just name this blue team. Whoops. And then we'll name this red team. And then let's just fix that name. Great. All right, so now we've got it. Okay, so let's figure out how to get these to show up. So if we go under layout, transform, and let's get the sizing correct here. Great. And then let's do that to this other one. So it'll be the same size, but we need to put it in a different location. And so then we'll load our blue team here and our red team down here. So team 1 and team 2 respectively, and it'll be the list of players. So right now these aren't showing up correctly. So I think what we need to do is let's do the font size to 40. And then we'll come back up here. Oh, and we need to make an adjustment on the blue team. I could just drag it down here really quick, but I think I want it to be a little bit more exact. So let's just do 60 and then 63. And that kind of gives it a good feel. So select match will update based on whatever's happening in this view. So if the game is starting or something like that, it'll change to update whatever is happening in this view. And we'll get to that in a second. Blue team will list the players in team 1, and then red team will list the players in team 2. And here's our team 1 list under the blue team. So let's set that up. So there's our list for team 1. And we can come down here. We'll basically apply the same thing. We're just gonna move it down a little bit lower. Perfect, okay. So this will be a list of buttons here and a list of buttons here that represent the players in the lobby. The last thing I wanna do before we're done with this UI is let's add a terrain mockup. So instead of having the avatar, we wanna show like the map or terrain. So let's just get another panel. We'll call it map train. I'll just leave it to that actually. Okay, and then all we're gonna do here is just add a texture, little texture rectangle. And I do have a texture that we can add. So come down, select the texture up here and then select new image texture. And then let's just add our placeholder texture. And again, like similar to the player's avatar, if you had a different texture for whatever map you had, as part of the data that gets sent back, once the players have been matched together and they get moved to the lobby, you can just show whatever map or whatever you want here in this. For now, I'm just hard coding it just for illustrative purposes. And then here's our map terrain. So let's drag that up there, and there it is. Great. And let's try to fix the properties here. I think we need to do fixed width. And I want to say it's, oh yeah, so it's over here. So we need to adjust the location. And then I'm going to half the scale. And be careful about these image sizes whenever you do this. I think I'm using pretty high quality images. Make sure they're low quality because they will take up a lot of space. Like, do you see how I had to half scale it there? That's just me kind of being lazy. You'd probably want to have a 1-to-1 scale. Maybe you have different assets for different size screens and you want to load those respectively, and you can have those load. But in general, just keep your image sizes low so you're not overburdening the client with all this data. And then let's fix, I'm not sure why I didn't add the containers location. So let's do that really quick. So we'll just put over top of it. So as you can see, what it'll look like, you'll come to the initial matchmaking phase with your avatar showed up, and then we'll show the list of matches here. And then once you click on one of the matches, that container will go away, and then we'll load in the lobby container, and it'll show the map that you're about to join. And it should have some map. Oh, I didn't do the map info. I'm gonna fix the map info in a second, and then we'll show our different teams here while it's waiting. And then of course, this status up here will also be updated to reflect that current state in the process. But let's just fix our map info. All right, so it's just gonna sit right on top of that map image. And this is just gonna be like the information like 3v3 and then maybe the name of the map or whatever you wanna do. It just kind of illustrates the kind of stuff that you can show and populate based on the data that we get from the server. Like all these teams and this map info will be based off the server. And again, you can pull or load the map images or preview from the server. You just would pass in a URL as part of that data, and then you would just load that data from a remote source, maybe through an HTTP request, or maybe they have a built-in map asset getter for URLs. I haven't looked into that yet. If somebody does know, let me know in the comments. Okay, so let's turn on the matches container back again. And so that's pretty much it for the UI side. We don't have to connect anything to the buttons because all of our buttons will be dynamically loaded, and those connections for the signal actions, we'll wire those up manually. Let's wrap up here with the UI being completed and pick back up in the next video where we look at how to dynamically load matches and users into the interface, and also how we send and receive messages to finish out the matchmaking process. And we'll finish out the series with at least one video on the server side. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. Thanks for watching.